Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. This is Britt Gergen from Handshake. We're going to get started in 15 to 30 seconds, I'm going to say. We're super excited to have you here today for our product roadmap webinar. Before we kick things off, though, I want to make sure that audio and visual are working okay. So if you can hear my voice and if you can see the title slide, if you could jump into the questions panel and give us a quick hello. We've already got a couple in there right now. Hi, Cherie. Hi, Nathan. Hi, Megan. Hi, Christy. Awesome. Oh, they're rolling in. Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. Well, let's go ahead and get started then. So as I just mentioned, today we are going to be taking you through Handshake's product roadmap. And I am joined by the incomparable Jade Path, who's going to be co-presenting with me. Jade, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. This is Jade. I lead our university product team here at Handshake. I'm really excited to go through the 2020 roadmap with you.
Awesome. And again, my name is Britt. That's me on the right. I'm a product marketing manager here at Handshake. Also very excited to talk to you about 2020. It's going to be great. Okay. So from an agenda perspective, here's how things are going to play out. We'll start off by having a quick discussion about how Handshake's product process works and also laying the groundwork for what our broad 2020 vision is. So we'll start very high level and then get more specific. After that, we'll do a quick recap of recent releases. So for this, you can think things that were released in the last month or two. And then from there, we'll talk about product updates for 2020. We'll start by talking about updates for career centers. Then we'll talk about updates your students can expect to see. And then finally, the employers that you work with. We'll wrap things up with a couple of resources related to how you can stay in the know around product updates. And then as per usual, we'll save some time for Q&A at the end. On the topic of Q&A, we are going to be monitoring questions throughout today's presentation. So please feel free to use that questions panel to write in as we're going through the content. Whoever's not speaking between me and Jade will be doing questions. And then we've also got some friends from the Handshake team logged in to help with those as well. So please send them over. And we'll have some time at the end as well where we can talk through things out loud. One other piece of housekeeping, as per usual, if you've joined a webinar that I've led before, you know that I am diligent about getting you a follow-up email the next day. So this will be no different. I'll be sending out a follow-up email to everybody with some follow-up details as well. So be on the lookout for that. So with that said, let's dive into the content. And as I mentioned, we want to start with a very high-level view of how we're thinking about things here at Handshake. And if you read Christine Cruz-Vergara's holiday letter, which she sent out at the beginning of January, you saw that 2020 for Handshake is all about investing in our relationships with our university partners and in the university product as well. So as you know, you came to a product roadmap webinar. You know we're going to talk about the immediate areas of product focus later on today. But before we do that, I also wanted to note that on an even higher level, one of Handshake's primary goals that spans partnership and product is the desire to bring our marketplace to life, to bring our community closer together. So we sit at the nexus of over 900 universities and colleges, 17 million students and young alumni, and 425,000 employers. So what does it mean to foster deeper connections between these different constituents? And how does that ultimately allow us to embed folks like career services more deeply into the Handshake experience to the net benefit of everybody? So you'll start seeing this broader theme reflected in some of the product updates today, but it's also something to keep in mind moving forward in 2020 and something that we want to talk to you about. So as you're talking to your Handshake relationship manager, please feel free to talk about kind of like how this manifests to you, because we're really interested in kind of continuing to have a conversation around bringing the three sides of our community together and how that might impact product in the future. Now, as you know, we are also continuing to execute on our commitment to embed universities more deeply in the product building process. And you may or may not have seen this slide roughly 1 million times over the last 2 months. We're going to make it 1,000,001 today. So I'm going to pass it over to Jade to talk about the product building process.
Yeah, this is a pretty standard product planning process. And we start with the research and strategy phase, defining what we want to work on and what options there are. We look at feedback from university teams, how-to tickets submitted, bug tickets submitted, and really narrow down what we could work on. And then we move into the design phase once we understand what we actually want to do, what the impact could be, we move in to look at different ways that could be reflected actually in the product and different ways we could solve those problems. Then we start to work with the engineers. We get into the build phase and actually build out some of the designs that you see in phase 2. Finally, we test and analyze, make sure that the products are working as intended, and then we continue to iterate on every feature that you see in Handshake over time. Perfect. And then, Britt, do you want to talk about how we're embedding career services in every phase?
Gosh, I sure do. And I was just thinking we should have this be like a call and response at a concert where I like hold the microphone out and everybody sings along.
I love that.
But so hopefully you've seen this slide before, as I mentioned, but now I want to talk about how we're embedding career services at each step in this product planning and building process. So on the research and strategy front, we are looking to come together with our career services partners through product workshops. We've had several of these already on insights and reporting, events and fairs and appointments. And for those of you who attended those, you know that the workshops are all about surfacing early ideas that we have for updates to a certain set of features. And then we're also looking to solicit feedback and kind of have an open dialogue with the schools in attendance to validate that we're taking the right approach and to gather more information about other things we should be considering. We are also starting to implement new mini advisory boards, and these come into play during the design phase. So the mini advisory boards are made up of about 20 different folks from schools across the country who help us in the next phase of developing a new set of features. So these folks are joining our product team to give advice on early mock-ups and designs that we have for some of the updates, and essentially like take the conversation further and deeper about the updates that we want to make around things like reporting, events and fairs, and appointments. Next up, as we start building things, we want to report back to you on them. And oh my goodness, we're in the midst of one of these right now. It's a product roadmap webinar. So again, these are really an opportunity for us to take a step back and talk about what we're doing across the entire Handshake product, and also to report back to you on some of the progress we've made through those product workshops and mini advisory boards. Next up, to complement the testing and analyzing phase, is beta groups. So for some of our larger product releases, we want to give as many people as are interested early access to the features to make sure that they're working properly and to help us decide on any other tweaks that we want to make ahead of a broader launch. So you'll start to hear more about beta groups later this year as we start to move through this process for some of our bigger projects. We'll talk about that today as well. And then finally, in the iteration phase, this is a pretty broad bucket, but we're always looking to improve the features that we've built across the board. And product feedback, either submitted via support or discussed with your university relationship manager, is a great way to help us kind of like feed new ideas into subsequent research and strategy phases. So this was always an ongoing circle, and you'll kind of continue to see us execute on this particular flow over and over and over again. Cool. So now, before we dive in, we wanted to talk about the product themes for 2020. So very specifically related to product, here is what we will be investing in over the course of this year. We want to empower our career services partners to demonstrate success with self-service analytics. And this is going to take shape in a variety of updates to the way that we approach reporting in the platform. Super excited to have Jade talk about that. But we really want to make it easier to use and more expansive as well. Next up, we want to help our Career Center partners foster meaningful student engagement at scale. So what this means is we want you to be able to facilitate fantastic touch points with your students that have an impact on them and track all of it and manage all of it seamlessly through Handshake. We'll talk about that a lot today. And then the final piece, the final theme, I should say, is that we want to bring all three sides of the Handshake community together. So, you know, I mentioned this before, this is a company level initiative and one that has implications for career services very specifically. We'll talk a little bit about how it's impacting some of the updates we're making in the near term. And then we also wanted to call it out as sort of a theme for 2020 because it's something that we're going to continue doing research on and having conversations with our university partners about. Anything to add on that, Jade?
No, that pretty much sums it up.
Great. Well then, we are going to first, or I should say now, dive into a quick recap of some recent product releases. Again, think last month or two on all sides of the product. And I am going to kick it over to Jade to start us off.
some really exciting updates over the last couple of months for career services. The first, I'll start with permissions. We've been talking to your teams about this for a long time, and we've revamped the design of the permissions page, as well as added an organizational role field to career services accounts. So I've highlighted here just the percent of types of accounts for student assistants and campus partners in the system. So I think it's really helpful to see just how many non-career services users are actually in the system with career services accounts. This will really help us as we think about marketing to the right sets of users, learning and taking in feedback from the right groups of users. And we're really hoping that the new permissions designs make it very easy for you to assign the right roles to the right groups.
And start expanding the types of people that you can give access to Handshake.
Exactly. Employer label visibility is another one that seems small, but is really exciting when you think about how this can impact your ability to engage with employers and understand their relationships through universities. You can now use employer label filters on the contacts and career fair registrations page. On the jobs page, I think it'll actually be live later today, and you can keep an eye on the product announcements for when that is actually live. But this one is extremely exciting and really embedding the employer label filters across the platform. Bulk complete appointments is another one that we're really excited about here at Handshake. It's the ability to actually complete appointments at the end of the day or at the end of the week if you're interested in, to make sure that you're spending your time effectively if you can't complete them at the time of the appointment. Lots of requests on that one for exactly that use case of completing them at the end of the day. And then finally, one of the most requested features at Handshake from when I've worked here is event and career fair waitlist for students. We've already seen the feature's been live for a couple weeks now, and we've already seen over 850 students added to waitlists. So we are looking forward to just what an impact this will have on attendance at your event and your ability to adopt events and career fairs if you were really blocking on having wait lists first.
Totally. And I think all of these really speak to the way that you can streamline a lot of your workflows in Handshake. So we're really looking to provide these types of wins to you so that you can have a day that's a lot more organized and efficient. Cool. Awesome. So I'm going to talk about a couple of recently released updates to students. So one of the biggest ones was a release of a new student homepage and school profile page. So these two pages are actually now we're in the midst of a testing period for them. So we've rolled the new student homepage and school profile page out to about 10% of students. And the testing phase is essentially to assess whether these new pages are achieving the goals that we set out to achieve. So what we were looking to do was to more immediately express the value of Handshake to students who were logging into the system, whether they had a strong intention around the reason they were logging in or not. So if they were coming in knowing that they wanted to register for an event, how could we very quickly show them how to do that and provide value for them? And then simultaneously, if a student was logging in for the first time, not really sure of the broad scope of things that Handshake could help them with, not really with a particular intention in mind, how could we display to them all of the different things that they could potentially take advantage of? And that's what gave birth to this new homepage. And when we talk about the success of the new designs, we're looking to understand how much this new page drives students to take high value actions like viewing their Career Center page, signing up for an appointment, RSVPing for an event, or looking at jobs. We're going to be doing an analysis of this experiment later this week, and then hopefully we'll be looking to roll out to 100% of students shortly thereafter. We're also in the testing period for a new sign-up flow. So this particular flow is for students and alumni that are creating a brand new account, not logging into an existing one. So we're looking for people who are creating one who didn't have one created before. And the updates we've rolled out on this front aim to break the sign-up process into more bite-sized and logical chunks so that it feels a little bit more directive for new users and a little bit less overwhelming. And I should say too that if you want to read more about these updates, you should definitely check out my product announcements where I've gone in depth on a lot of the thinking behind these updates and also share more information about them in general. Cool. Now a couple of quick updates from the employer side. So the first update I want to highlight on the employer front might seem like a small one, but it actually came highly requested by both employers and our career services partners. And that is that now on the job form, employers can target a job to particular majors using checkboxes instead of clicking on pill-shaped bubbles. This might seem insignificant, but this greatly clarifies how that page works and should lead to a lot less jobs that are accidentally targeted at the wrong types of students.
Another one of the top requests from career services teams.
Yeah.
Because the jobs were categorized incorrectly.
Yeah. So this hopefully brings a lot more clarity to the job form, and as a result, we're hoping that it will lead to, again, less incorrectly targeted jobs for you all to process. So we're super excited about that. The next 3 updates that I'm going to talk about are all available to premium employers, and I'm going to touch on them briefly here, but then they'll also resurface later in today's presentation because we're going to continue iterating on them in 2020. So first up, we've released a mobile and QR code friendly event check-in functionality that helps premium employers centralize event attendance information in Handshake. And what this means for you all is that more attendance data is going to be centralized in Handshake as opposed to in another third-party platform where you might not have as much visibility. We're really looking to centralize where employers are operating and thus centralize the data that you would have access to. So super excited about that. The next update is the result of a lot of research we were doing with students that suggested they found employer messaging to occasionally be impersonal. So it could feel like it was just an email in the worst case. So we rolled out an update that allows premium employers to highlight key employees in messaging with students. So this means that the company could provide a more curated experience for students by connecting them with someone who has a similar background to them, whether it's what they studied or the school that they attended. And in that way, help students feel more comfortable and empowered throughout the recruitment process. Finally, we released an update that helps employers make smarter decisions about how they connect with students. Essentially, we want employers to be just as data-driven as you all are. And this is the first step that we're taking to embed an analytics and reporting feature in Handshake for employers. So again, we'll talk about how this is going to evolve later on, but this is really in the interest, again, of helping employers make smarter decisions about how they interact with students and thus make it a better curated experience for students in general. Okay, now before we dive into 2020 updates, I just wanted to make a quick plug. If you want to learn about updates like the ones we just talked about, stay on top of them on a regular cadence, I highly recommend you check out the Handshake announcements section of our community. Right now I'm posting updates weekly, and if you follow the Handshake announcements page, you will get an email every single time I post. And to make it fun, here's a QR code you can scan with your phone. We'll give you a hot 10 seconds to do that. If you want to pull up the page and follow it. I'll also share this out in the follow-up email as well, but highly recommend you check it out so that you can hear more from me, one of your favorite people at Handshake. Okay, that feels like enough time. We'll flash it up later. So now I want to hand it back over to Jade to take us into a deep dive of updates on the career services side. So Jade, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. So I wanted to start, I'm going to introduce some of the themes and some of the feature areas that we're going to be focused on in 2020, but I wanted to start by also incorporating how we've revamped the product process that Britt went over earlier. So I want to start with our Insights Mini Advisory Board. I'm not going to read every name on here, but I wanted to show you who's included in the Insights Mini Advisory Board for 2019. And these are users that are helping us define and iterate on the ideas that we have for insights as we move into 2020. So we're really thankful we created these advisory boards, keeping in mind the type of institution, your role in the office, your experience with this feature area, so that we have a really broad group that can represent different ideas and different user types. So we're really thankful to all the members of the mini advisory boards, and we'll go through the others as we get to this. So I want to start with reporting and analytics. Britt talked about the theme of access to data and reporting in Handshake. So we want to make sure to go through each of the areas that we'll be investing in. The first is cross-system reporting. So this is consolidating the data in Handshake so you can easily report on how a student is engaging across the platform or how an employer is posting jobs and attending fairs and attending events. So we really want to consolidate and offer you ways to actually look at activity across Handshake, which should reduce the manual time spend of pulling all of these reports into Excel, merging them, and then sending them to another system. We're really hoping to provide you with a really clear and clean set of data that you can work with. Next is saved reports. This might give this might give some of those top requests a run for their money. Saved reports is definitely one of the most common requests for reporting. Right now, it's manual. You have to save the links, hopefully create some type of shared document. We want to make sure that you can save reports and share those with the rest of your team and potentially even the Handshake network, so that Handshake can share reports with you for what we see coming in the most that universities are requesting. So this is a great way that we'll see career services embedded across the Handshake network with the ability to actually save these reports. You can see a screenshot here that shows the school reports versus the favorite reports, and then all reports that you can actually filter down and look at specific types of reports, maybe on students, and which of those you'd like to actually save to your favorite list. Next is scheduled reports. So in a lot of our feedback with the product workshops, with the advisory board, we heard this idea that you want to be able to send data to other departments on campus, other stakeholders, and then you also want to be able to send data to other systems in some cases. We see scheduled reports as the next step in that journey to make sure that you can easily send data to the right people and to the right systems. So we'll be introducing scheduled reports in 2020, and we'll constantly be working on improving that. The next thing that we hear a lot is about field definitions, actually understanding the data you're reporting on. So we want to make sure that we highlight what the fields mean in Handshake, and that you can easily identify what the field is that you're pulling into a report. There have been some really great examples of users actually creating data dictionaries. We want to make sure that this is accessible right in the product. The last part of data that we'll be focused on in the first part of 2020 is First Destination survey updates. So coming before back to school, ready by July of this year. And we want to make sure that you can create general FDS links so that you can post them on your website and direct students to your First Destination survey. This wouldn't require a login. It would function much more like the First Destination survey kiosk, where the students typing in their email and then seeing the survey. Lots of requests for that as a part of the First Destination survey experience. We also are introducing a simplified knowledge response form. Last year, we introduced a form that follows the student experience. We want to make sure it's really easy for you if you're on the phone with a student or looking at their LinkedIn, you can actually add a response. We'll also be introducing optional Handshake email content and a salary question. So if you don't want to use Handshake's reminder emails and you have your own set that goes out from an external email platform, that you can use that. And then also that you can set the salary question as optional if that's what works best for your institution. And finally, we'll be adding skip logic by major and college if you do ask a particular department a certain set of questions as a part of your First Destination survey. Really excited about all those updates coming in spring 2020. After the spring, we'll be focused on the actionable analytics as a part of our reporting and data theme. So we want to make sure that you can see the actual data throughout the product to inform the decisions that you're making. So this is still really in the early stages. We want to make sure that on different pages, like in this example shown, on the students page, that you can actually see information about how students are engaging and use that to take action. This is a really exciting shift for Handshake. We want to make sure that we first cover that access to data piece as a part of the reporting and insights theme. But after that, we really want to think about innovative ways to embed analytics throughout the product. Great. Moving on to events and fairs, I also wanted to show the members. We just got the Events and Fairs and Appointments Advisory Board invites out this week, but I wanted to show who's representing events and fairs as a part of the mini advisory board for 2020. Again, we're so thankful for these users spending the time going through and providing detailed feedback on how we're thinking about approaching solutions to these different problems. So for events and fairs, what we're planning on releasing in summer of 2020, we want students to be able to interact with the Career Fair app that helps them spend their time wisely at a career fair. We want them to be able to access the employers they're attending, favorite those employers, and really structure the way that they're going to engage at that event. We'll also be working on an improved check-in experience that you can launch easily for all types of events across campus, and looking at new ways like QR code check-in potentially for events to really make sure that you can capture all students that are checking in and then report back on those students. We're also looking at management tools for career services as a part of the events and fairs updates so that you can easily communicate with registrants and students, so you can track all payments and create interactive booth maps. There were some questions that came in around wait lists for employers. So we'll also be thinking about how that could be included in some of these ideas for events and fairs, and we'll bring that back to the advisory board and see how it could fit into our development timeline for 2020. Just an idea of what we're thinking about for the Career Fair app in a bit more detail. We're thinking about ways that you could actually highlight employers that you'd like to direct students' attention to as a part of the employer list. We're thinking about ways that employers can actually assign times to meet with students at their booth instead of waiting in long lines. And then ways that students can actually see where an employer is located at the fair. Again, all of these trying to make sure that the student can really spend their time wisely at the career fair without having to wander around and identify where an employer is located. Finally, the Appointments Mini Advisory Board wanted to give you an idea of who's representing appointments updates in 2020. And these updates are coming in later on in spring 2020, appointment kiosk updates. We've gotten a lot of feedback from universities that students are confused when going through the check-in process. So we want to make sure that we make it really easy for students to check in, that we offer an appointments only kiosk. And then if there are more than 7 appointment types listed, that we actually surface a search bar for students so they can start to search for the appointment type that they're actually looking for before they check in. So these updates to the appointment kiosk are coming this spring. And then in development 2020, so post back to school, we'll be thinking through some updates to appointments. In the product workshops, we pose a lot of questions around which areas would make the biggest impact. And here are some of the areas that we identified: to-way calendar sync, the student scheduling experience, drop-ins and check-in overall, appointments by office location, and then group appointments. So we'll be bringing back some of these ideas to the advisory board, and you can keep an eye out in these product roadmap webinars to understand what's coming for appointment updates later on in 2020. We want to give everyone an idea too about how this will look over time. So we talked about these throughout, but already live, we talked about the exciting updates that we've launched recently for career services. And then coming in the spring is really the access to data and reporting in Handshake. You can see that with cross-system reporting, saved and scheduled reports, field definitions, and first station surveys. And then events and fairs engagement, making sure that students are engaging with meaningful experiences on Handshake, with Career Fair app updates and improved check-in experience, and then management tools. And then later on in 2020, after back to school, so think post-July, appointment updates, actionable analytics, and then we'll be thinking about, and we're really brainstorming right now with career services teams to understand where we should invest with bringing the Handshake community together.
Cool.
Great.
Awesome.
I'll hand it back over to Britt.
All right, so before we dive into some more updates, we wanted to take a quick break and put out a poll. So give me 1 second while I enable this. So having looked at the roadmap that Jade just went through and the timelines as well, we would love to hear from you all. Which of the 2020 career services updates or areas of updates are you most excited about? We've got insights and reporting updates coming, first destination survey, events and fairs, appointments, or updates around bringing the Handshake community closer together. So yeah, please let us know. And we're seeing a lot of excitement around insights and reporting. That's awesome. As Jade mentioned, those are going to start coming this spring. So we're really excited to bring a lot of those to you, and we know they were highly requested. Awesome. Yeah, it looks like insights and reporting is holding steady, and events and fairs is in second. We hope you're excited about all of these, because we certainly are. But good to know, because insights and reporting and events and fairs are all kind of like going to be happening over the next couple of months. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to close this poll. And then, good, great. Still working well. Awesome. So now let's talk about some updates that your students can expect to see over the next few months. Here we go. First up, a highly requested update by our university partners. We are bringing single sign-on to our mobile app. This is going to greatly help streamline the login experience on mobile, and should also help reduce duplicate accounts that are created on the mobile platform. So it should be a lot easier for students to use Handshake for the first time via the app, I think I can hear Megan from the University of Kentucky cheering all the way here in San Francisco. At least I hope she is. But we're really, really excited about this one and the impact that it will bring. We're about to test this this week, and then it should be out shortly thereafter. So keep an eye on product announcements for more information. All right, next up. We are also, as a company, going to be focused on making the career search experience more guided for students. So what we want to do is break up what can feel like a really daunting process for students into smaller goals and tasks that are easier to accomplish, and then also figure out ways where Handshake can take on some of the tasks for you. So a good example of Handshake taking tasks on for you is this first bullet point. We're working on a project that will help us infer student job preferences rather than relying on students to keep them updated themselves, and thus have a better, more reactive job recommendation experience and algorithm for students. So as students come into the system and start using it, we can get a sense of the types of job roles or location interests they have based on what they're searching for and what they're clicking on. So while we also want students to articulate this information themselves, and that's going to be kind of another part of this work over the next year, we also want to take some of that work off their plate whenever we can, especially when we think about, a student logging into Handshake for the first time, telling us what their interests are, maybe when they're a sophomore, and then that information evolving over time. We don't want them to always have to go back and update if we can kind of figure it out for ourselves. So that's going to be an initial product that will hopefully take some of that administration off of students' hands. Next up, another part of this guided experience is that we want to help students establish a better vocabulary around the career search process. We know there can be a lot of complexity and a lot of jargon around, like what different types of roles are called or how to go about looking for them in Handshake. So we want to kind of reduce a lot of the complexity around that. We're in the initial research phase of this project right now. So you can expect to hear more about this in the coming weeks. But ultimately, we just want to take what a student knows about themselves and then from there, guide them to potential paths they could go down, rather than relying on them to kind of navigate the system without really understanding how things are structured or how we refer to things. And then finally, there are also some really concrete investments we can make to help guide students. And one of those that we're looking to make in the short term is making the job search page more streamlined and less overwhelming. We know that that's a really powerful tool that students will use to find relevant opportunities and to feed back into our algorithm so that we can recommend better opportunities for them. But we also want it to feel really easy to use and not super overwhelming. So you can expect to see some work on that front as well. Okay, another big area of investment for students over the next couple of months are going to be in efforts to re-engage them. So after they've logged into Handshake, how can we ensure that their first trip to Handshake isn't their last? So one way we're looking at doing that is re-engaging students with mobile push notifications via the app. So a couple of examples of these might be your document has been approved or your job application was reviewed by an employer. So just little nudges we can push them on the mobile platform that will help bring them back into Handshake and make them feel like they're making positive progress toward their goals. You can expect to hear more about that soon. And then another area that we're exploring here is via email. So we found that email, when deployed thoughtfully and monitored closely, is still a really effective way to engage with students. So we want to start digging into how we can send an email to a student at exactly the right time to bring them back into Handshake to take a really meaningful action. So this is also still in the research phase. So we'll keep you in the loop on any new emails we're testing out. And as always, we'll be keeping like a hawk eye on performance. And then I also wanted to call out that unsubscribes from this type of email would not impact unsubscribes to emails coming from your office. So we're always going to be really, really cognizant of how these are performing and ensuring that they are not oversaturating students. Rather, bring them into the Handshake platform for a really express purpose. Okay, finally, and this harkens back to the theme of bringing the three sides of the Handshake community together, we want to create new, low barrier, less intimidating ways for students and employers to connect, because we know that the process of submitting an application can often feel like dropping a piece of paper that you spent a lot of time on into a black hole, and you might never hear back. So what this work aims to do is allow employers to really easily and visibly, I should say, express interest in students and allow students to do that in return. So we'll actually, and this is a project that, because it spans across students and employers, we'll actually talk about it in the employer section as well. But this is really meant to help students feel like the career search process is less of a black hole and allow employers to more readily target candidates that are motivated to work for them. And a lot of the work we're doing here aims to beef up the existing functionality we have in the system. So like right now, you can favorite an employer, but we don't share that signal to the employer themselves, which could be a really great way for them to target students who have expressed an interest in them. So how can we bring more clarity to those types of existing functionality and bring new fun ways for students to say that they're interested in an employer into the platform? Cool. So these are just a couple of the updates you can expect to see in the coming months on the student side. And we want to take a break again to launch another poll. And this one's a bit broader, but we just want to gauge how interested are you in product updates we make to the student experience. We know that everybody has some interest in this, but we are bringing you all of these updates kind of equally, and we just want to kind of understand what the breakout is here. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so it's looking like the majority of folks are very interested or interested. And actually here, let me show you. Oh, wait. Oh, I have to close the poll and then show it. Okay, I'm going to close the poll and then I'm going to share the results. There they are. Sorry, I didn't share it earlier for the first poll, but we can share that out as a follow-up as well. Okay, so good to know. Student updates still very relevant to everybody on the line. Great. Okay. Perfect. So let's wrap things up with updates to the employer experience. So updates your employers can expect to see over the next couple of months. First up, now we've announced this via emails and in product announcements. So some of you have probably already heard about this, but I wanted to promote it here again because we know this topic is really important to our partners, and we want to ensure that we are bringing your perspective to the table. So this year, we want to make updates to the employer trust score and employer flagging process. And because this is such a cross-functional topic, we're going to do a whole product workshop devoted to it next week. So our friends from the employer team are going to be working alongside us to present this. And we're looking to gather your feedback on how we can bring more transparency and relevancy to the trust score, and then how we can streamline flagging so that it's more high signal, so that we can better identify flags that are around things like fraud versus flags that are raised for other reasons. So would definitely love to have you join, learn more about the directions we're thinking of going in, provide feedback, provide guidance. So if you want to register, you can aim your phone's camera at that QR code. We'll also share out the link in the follow-up email as well. But would love to have you attend. And it'll run very similarly to the way we've run the other product workshops as well. Cool. Alrighty. So I mentioned in the student section that we're invested in low commitment actions, which essentially means how can we make it super easy for a student to say, hey, I'm interested in this employer, and have that very simple low barrier action be reported back to employers so that they can better target their job postings and their messaging. We also want to mirror that on the employer side so that employers can express interest in students, and then we can surface them to students in the product. This is an early mock-up of what this might look like, but definitely stay tuned as we continue to develop this product, and we're really excited about how this can bring more transparency and more small but exciting wins to the process for students. Okay, next up. We want to keep employers engaged and responsive in Handshake, so we're starting to develop more notifications for them. As you all know, career services users get a lot of notifications that help them stay on top of what's happening in Handshake, so we want to start fleshing this out more for employers. And in doing this, we want to keep them abreast of information like new candidates that might be a good match for some of their postings, and also keep them more notified about operational topics in Handshake, things like job approvals or job expirations, so that they're maintaining more streamlined relationships with your offices and you're not having to track them down as much. Handshake can take a lot of that work off of your plate. So you can expect to see some updates on this front in the next couple of months as well. Okay, let's talk about coursework. So this is a new feature that we're going to be rolling out for premium employers that helps us to push forward the mantra that students are more than their major. We want employers to have access to more types of inputs that might help them identify qualified candidates. And we think coursework is a really great way to do this. It's more granular than major and allows students to show off kind of like a more well-rounded picture of themselves. So what we're doing is adding coursework as a way for premium employers to identify qualified candidates to reach out to or target with their job postings. And then we're also implementing a back-end model that will allow us to organize all of the coursework data in Handshake and present it to employers in a more streamlined way. So this will allow us to essentially go through a mapping process on the back end so that we can allow employers to search by subject area or by a specific course, and even do cool things like help them identify courses that are introductory level. So this is all going to be happening on the back end, and again, will hopefully help employers identify more qualified candidates. Cool. Next up, I mentioned at the top of the presentation that we had released an update that allowed premium employers to feature their own employees in messaging to help students connect with somebody who had a similar background to them. And this is something that we want to continue expanding on in 2020 to bring a more personalized feel to the career search process and help students feel like messaging is more exciting and a way for them to connect with real people. So in addition to allowing premium employers to feature employees in messaging, we're also looking at ways that they might highlight folks like alumni, or people with similar backgrounds via the Handshake interface as well for students. So you can see a mock-up of what that might look like, and we'll be having more developments about this in the coming weeks and months as well. All right, finally, I mentioned up at the top that we had released some initial analytics to premium employers, and we want to continue expanding on this. So you can see here an early mock-up of a dashboard that we're developing that helps employers better understand how well they're connecting with students throughout the application process. And ultimately, we want to give this to them so that they can better illustrate the return on investment that they're getting from Handshake and optimize their future outreach efforts to students so that they're more targeted, more intelligent, more data-driven. We're also going to be introducing peer benchmarks for premium employers, again, to help them better understand how their own practices are stacking up against their peers. This is something that we offer to career centers already through your platform. So we're looking to, as I mentioned before, make employers just as data-driven as your offices are. Cool. All right, one more poll. Oh my goodness, one more poll for you to wrap us up here. So similar to students, we're also interested in understanding how interested you are in product updates to the employer experience. So let us know here. Awesome. Cool, great. So here are the results. It looks like there's still a lot of interest in employer updates, but we're skewing a little bit more towards the middle ground here. So it seems like student updates are maybe a little bit more exciting. And I would imagine too, it also depends on the position you hold in your office, whether you're interfacing mainly with employers or students. But all good to know, and we appreciate you sharing your thoughts. All right, so we are going to wrap stuff up here with a couple of resources. And these are tried and true resources. You know about them already, but I want to talk about them again, mainly because they mostly come from me, and I'm an egomaniac. So to stay in the loop about these updates as they are being developed and being released, here are some ways that you can stay in the loop. First up is via product announcements. And I mentioned this at the top of the presentation. Right now, I am posting product announcements weekly in the Handshake announcements section of the community. If you follow that page, you'll get an email sent to you every single time I post. And I am posting about updates coming to all three sides of the Handshake product: career services, students, and employers. So it's a great way to stay in the loop. You can also attend webinars just like this one to get all of this information. So you'll see that we're actually going to be offering this type of product roadmap webinar 4 times a year so that we can continually report back to you on new updates that are coming out. So be on the lookout for those. And also specifically for this particular webinar, we're offering another session next Tuesday, the 11th. So if you want to come back and hear our gorgeous voices again, or invite your friends to come and join, we're going to be doing this presentation again, same content, just different time next week so that we can reach more people. So please feel free to invite folks to join that. And then finally, we also use email to reach out to all of you to share information about product updates. So if you're not already getting emails from me and you're interested in getting them moving forward, you'll want to make yourself a Handshake point of contact in the system. So if you go to your user profile page in Handshake, and specifically to your roles tab, you'll see that there is a permission called Handshake point of contact. That is how I pull my list of recipients for my emails. So you can use that checkbox to make sure that you're on my list moving forward. I send emails about all kinds of things: upcoming product releases, upcoming events and webinars, opportunities to interface with us, and beyond. I think they're really great. I hope everybody else thinks they're really great. I try and make them fun. But once you have made yourself a Handshake point of contact, just be on the lookout for emails from Britt from Handshake in your inbox. That's me. That's me trying to tell you something, and I'm so excited to tell you about it.
I think they're really great.
Thank you. Jade reads them. That's really great. Awesome. So yeah, so definitely take that action if you want to start receiving emails from me. And with that, we're going to move into the questions period. So we've got about 12 minutes to run through questions. Please feel free to keep sending them in via the questions panel. And again, as a follow-up, we are going to be sending a follow-up email to everybody within the next day or so. You're also going to be getting a survey to let us know what you thought about this presentation. So please use that to give us feedback. We're really curious about how we can better curate these sessions moving forward. So yeah, I'm going to jump on mute for just a second so I can check in with Jade, and then we'll start talking about questions. Awesome. So Jade highlighted a couple of really great questions that we want to call out to the broader group. So Raquel from University of Minnesota asked when the new student profile page will be rolling out to 100% of students. So just as a recap, it's currently rolled out to 10% of students, and we're going to be taking a look at how it performed tomorrow. And then from there, we'll decide if we need to make any tweaks to the design before we roll to 100%, or if we're ready to roll out pretty immediately. So the earliest, I would say it'll be within the next couple of days, and otherwise we might push it out just ever so slightly if we need to make any tweaks. I will report back as much as I can in tomorrow's product announcement to give you a better sense of when it might roll out. I will say that based on the early numbers that I heard from the team, it's looking like it is driving more valuable actions. And one of the biggest ones was it's driving a lot more students to click on the Career Center tab and check out all of your offerings. So super excited about that. And you'll hear more in tomorrow's product announcement. We also got a couple of questions actually about push notifications on the mobile app. So we had one from Laura from OSU, and then also Megan from Kentucky. about whether students will be able to like pick and choose which push notifications they want. As always, we will allow students to manage their notification settings and turn certain push notifications on or off. So basically, we'll release several of them, and then students can decide which ones they want to use. It's a great question. Okay. Jade, do you want to? Oh, yeah. Okay. Hang on. We just need to check in on a couple more questions. We'll be right back. All right, a couple more questions we wanted to address more broadly. So we had a lot of questions about premium employers in general, being able to identify them in the platform. So right now, the best way to do that is if you're viewing the system as a student, you'll see that premium employers have an upgraded profile page. I know that we've been having a lot of internal conversations about how we can better surface which employers are premium to our university partners. So that's definitely an ongoing conversation. We don't have any updates for you on that front yet, but I know we got a lot of questions about that. So we'll definitely take that back to the team, hopefully resurface it as a topic of conversation. We did get a specific question from KSU about the booth assignments and whether that was a premium feature. I believe that one's actually going to be, so the updates to the Career Fair app that Jade talked about earlier would actually be across all employers, mainly because that's mainly going to be managed by your offices, by career services offices. Is that correct, Jade?
Yeah, the booth, we haven't yet decided on whether or not scheduling time at the booth, who that would be available for. So we'll keep that open in discussion and probably bring that question to the advisory board before we bring it back to the rest of the team.
Awesome. We also got a lot of questions about coursework. So right now, the main way that the only way that we're getting coursework is when students self-report it. So it's a part of our onboarding flow. It's something they can add to their profile. And so they have the ability to add the courses that they want highlighted on their profile. We give them complete control over that. So right now, we don't have like an upload process for coursework. So it's mainly student reported, and I believe the statistic was that about 20% of students who log in share coursework data. So it's actually a pretty good chunk of them, and it is something that we recommend, schools promoting to their students as something that's really valuable to share on the profile. Now, we also got questions about how the mapping is working on the back end, and I would say it's very analogous to the way that you all approach mapping majors to major groups. So essentially, there is a hierarchy of standardized courses in Handshake that we're able to map courses entered by students to, and it's typically by things like keyword that we're looking for. We can try and share a little bit more information about that in the follow-up email, but just wanted to say it's very analogous to major mapping, and we're just taking it all on the back end and managing it there, so that your teams don't have to do that yourselves.
Great, and then a couple questions on the career services side of things. Waitlist notifications came up a couple times, so we'll include a help center document on what notifications students receive when they're added to a waitlist. Also a question about if you could turn that off, which you can't turn it off, but the waitlist is completely managed by Career Center. So if you don't want to add students to the registered list, definitely don't have to. And another question on how can career services see which employers are interested in our students? This is a question we'll be considering as a part of the data and reporting updates that are coming out, as well as we'll be brainstorming about how it could fit into that embedding career services in the Handshake network. A couple really great ideas coming in about how an employer explorer would look, if you could search for employers based on which students they're interested in, and maybe, which students are interested in which employers. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I love that theme for 2020 because it allows us to tap into the work that we're doing across the board and kind of like mutually raise everybody up. Another good example, this isn't really bringing things together as much, but like QR code check-in for employers is something we're now considering on the university side, so we can really kind of like collectively use these updates to improve everybody's lives.
Yeah, the other thing that came up really interesting for us in that bucket of embedding career services more deeply in the Handshake experience is a separate role. Eleanor from BU asked about roles for campus partners and a special type of permission set, and definitely another idea that's coming in about that. So we'll make sure to include that as we think about what that actually looks like post back to school.
Totally. So definitely keep those ideas coming. Keep talking to us about them. What's most exciting for you? And we'll be talking right back to you about what we're hearing. Awesome. Also wanted to clarify that I'll share a recording in the follow-up email, so you'll have access to our lovely voices in perpetuity. So be on the lookout for that in the next day. All right, folks, we've also been answering questions directly, so hopefully we've covered just about everything for you. We are going to wrap things up because we're coming up on the top of the hour. If you have any other questions you want to send in, please feel free to do so. But if you need to run, hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. And thanks so much for joining us. We hope this was helpful, exciting. Please fill out the survey, let us know what you thought, and hope to talk to you again real soon.